The humiliation. The massive crystalline dome of the Galactic Senate chambers stretched impossibly high above Ambassador Marcus Vale's head, its bioluminescent walls pulsing with the soft rhythm of a living organism. He had dreamed of this moment for 30 years, standing before the assembled representatives of 47 galactic civilizations, finally presenting Earth's case for full membership in the Federation. The weight of humanity's future pressed down on his shoulders like the gravity of a neutron star. Honored delegates, Marcus began, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. I come before you today not as a supplicant, but as the representative of a species that has proven its worth through 7.5 decades of peaceful coexistence and contribution to galactic society. The holographic displays around the chamber flickered to life, showing images of Earth's colonies spread across 23 star systems, lush terraformed worlds where humans had transformed barren rocks into garden paradises, space stations that served as neutral trading posts for a dozen different species, research facilities where human scientists worked alongside alien colleagues to unlock the mysteries of the universe. Dr. Nina Petrova, standing behind Marcus with the rest of the human delegation, noticed the subtle signs of dismissal rippling through the assembled aliens. The Zentorians' crystalline forms dimmed with boredom. The gaseous nebulons began to swirl more rapidly, their equivalent of fidgeting. Most telling of all, Senator Vexator Caney of the Draconian Empire had folded his massive leathery wings and closed his secondary eyes, leaving only his primary set to regard the humans with naked contempt. Our terraforming techniques have restored life to 13 dead worlds, Marcus continued, manipulating the holographic display to show before and after images of transformed planets. Our medical research has led to cures for 7 major interspecies diseases. Our translation algorithms have made communication possible between species that had never been able to speak to each other before. A low rumble of what might have been laughter emanated from the Krillian delegation. Massive insectoid beings whose compound eyes reflected the chamber's light like fractured mirrors. Their translator rendered the sound as derisive amusement. High Chancellor Morgath, ancient leader of the Senate whose species had been spacefaring when Earth's continents were still forming, raised one gnarled appendage for silence. His voice, when it came through the universal translator, carried the weight of millennia. Ambassador Vale, Morgath intoned, your species has indeed attempted to contribute to galactic civilization. However, the question before this body is not whether humans can perform basic tasks under supervision, but whether they possess the wisdom and stability necessary for full Federation membership. Captain Zara Okafor, head of the Human Security Detail, felt her hand unconsciously drift toward her sidearm. She forced herself to remain still, remembering Marcus's explicit instructions that this was a diplomatic mission. No matter what insults were hurled at humanity today, they would respond with dignity. Senator Vexator Caney unfolded his 12-foot frame and rose from his delegation's platform, his scales shimmering with colors that the human eye could barely perceive. When he spoke, his voice was like the rumble of distant thunder. High Chancellor, esteemed colleagues, Vexator began, his tone dripping with false courtesy. I have studied the human species extensively during their probationary period. While they show certain crude capabilities, they remain fundamentally unsuited for true galactic citizenship. The senator gestured, and new images replaced Marcus's presentation. These showed human colonies from a different perspective: crowded residential districts, industrial facilities, military installations. The data had been carefully selected and presented to make human settlements appear primitive and militaristic. Observe their population distribution, Vexator continued. Humans cluster together in massive urban centers, consuming resources at an unsustainable rate. They cannot achieve the harmonious balance that marks truly advanced civilizations. Their industrial processes, while adequate, lack the elegant efficiency that we have come to expect from Federation members. Dr. Petrova stepped forward, unable to remain silent. Senator, those images are from our earliest colonial efforts 70 years ago. Our current settlements. Silence. Vexator's roar shook the chamber. You will speak when recognized by this body, primitive. The word primitive hung in the air like a physical blow. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, but a calculating anger that he carefully kept from his face. As I was saying, Vexator continued, now pacing around the central platform like a predator circling prey, humans demonstrate the classic signs of an evolutionarily stunted species. Short lifespans that prevent long-term thinking. Emotional instability that leads to irrational decision-making. Most damning of all, a persistent tendency toward violence and territorial aggression. New displays showed carefully edited footage from Earth's history, wars, conflicts, disasters. The images were centuries old, but Vexter presented them as if they represented current human behavior. These creatures, the draconian senator continued, have spent their entire recorded history engaged in warfare with their own kind. They have polluted and nearly destroyed their birth world multiple times. They possess an arsenal of weapons capable of rendering entire planets uninhabitable. And we are to trust such beings with full Federation membership? A murmur of agreement rippled through several delegations. The hegemony representative, a mantis-like being with compound eyes, clicked his mandibles in what Marcus recognized as their species' expression of approval. Perhaps, the hegemony delegate suggested, his mechanical translator giving his words a cold clinical tone. We should consider reducing human territorial rights rather than expanding them. Their current allocation of star systems may be overly generous for such a volatile species. Marcus felt the walls of the chamber closing in around him. This wasn't going according to any of the scenarios they had prepared for. He had expected skepticism, even opposition, but not this coordinated campaign of humiliation. Honored delegates, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. I would remind this body that humanity has been a peaceful member of the galactic community for 75 years. We have never initiated aggression against any Federation member. Our colonies have served as neutral ground for diplomatic negotiations between hostile species. Our research has benefited every civilization represented in this chamber. High Chancellor Morgath's ancient eyes fixed on Marcus with something that might have been pity. Ambassador Vale, your species' recent behavior is not in question. However, recent behavior is not the sole criterion for Federation membership. We must consider evolutionary potential, cultural stability, and long-term compatibility with galactic civilization. And humans, Vextor interjected, spreading his wings for emphasis, have reached their evolutionary ceiling. Your neural capacity is limited compared to truly advanced species. Your social structures remain primitive despite centuries of development. Most telling of all, your technology has advanced only through reverse engineering Federation science rather than original innovation. Dr. Petrova bit back her response. The Draconian was lying. Human innovations in quantum mechanics, biotechnology, and space-time manipulation had been quietly revolutionary. But those breakthroughs were classified, known only to Earth's highest levels of government and military command. The debate continued for 3 more hours, with delegation after delegation rising to voice their concerns about human membership. The Morpheans questioned human psychological stability. The collective worried about human individualism, disrupting their hive-mind society. The ethereals claimed that human brain patterns generated disharmonious psychic resonance that interfered with their telepathic communications. When the final vote was called, the result was devastating. 39 delegations voted against human membership, with only 5 abstentions and 3 votes in favor. Worse than mere rejection, the Senate passed a new resolution placing humanity under primitive species protection status, effectively quarantining Earth's expansion and placing human space under Federation oversight. As the session concluded, and delegates began filing out, Marcus stood in the center of the chamber feeling hollow. 75 years of careful diplomacy, of proving humanity's worth, of building relationships and contributing to galactic society, all of it swept away in a single afternoon of systematic humiliation. Captain Okafor approached him quietly. Ambassador, our ship is ready for departure. Shall I signal Earth? Marcus nodded slowly, then looked up at the crystalline dome above them. Signal Admiral Morrison, he said quietly. Tell him the diplomatic option is officially closed. It's time for Plan B. Vex Torquani, overhearing the exchange as he passed, let out a sound that might have been laughter. The idea that primitive humans might have a backup plan was clearly amusing to him. He would not be laughing for much longer. The reckoning 6 months after humanity's humiliation at Centauri Prime, the first attack struck without warning. The draconian heavy cruiser Sovereign's Wrath was conducting a routine patrol of the Kethvar trade corridor when it simply vanished. No distress signal, no debris field, no trace of what had happened. One moment the ship was reporting normal status to Fleet Command, the next it was gone from all sensors as if it had never existed. Admiral Thane Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Base, Earth's most classified military installation, watching the intelligence reports flow across the holographic displays. Built into the moon's far side and shielded by advanced stealth technology, Luna Base had been humanity's greatest secret for over 50 years, a testament to what humans could accomplish when they weren't performing for alien audiences. That's the 7th Draconian vessel this month, Colonel Rosa Martinez reported, her voice carrying the satisfaction of a predator that had tasted blood. Their trade routes through the outer rim are completely paralyzed. They're pulling back to core systems. Dr. James Wu, Chief of Human Intelligence Division, manipulated the display to show a galaxy-wide tactical overview. Red markers indicated disrupted alien operations across dozens of star systems, not just Draconian, but hegemony supply convoys, Morphean research stations, even heavily defended Xentorian fortress worlds. The beautiful thing, Dr. Wu said, unable to suppress a slight smile, is that they still have no idea what's hitting them. To their sensors, the attacks are coming from unknown forces using unidentifiable technology. They can't even begin to comprehend that the primitive humans might be responsible. Admiral Morrison nodded grimly. He had spent 30 years preparing for this moment, the day when humanity would stop pretending to be helpless. The diplomatic option had always been a long shot, but it had served its purpose. While Ambassador Vale and his team had played the role of humble supplicants, Earth's real work had been conducted in the shadows. Status report on Operation Shadowfall, Morrison commanded. Captain Eric Johansson materialized on the holographic communicator, his image transmitted from somewhere, deep in alien space. The captain of the stealth ship Phantom Protocol looked tired but satisfied. Phase 2 is complete, Admiral, Johansson reported. We've successfully infiltrated 17 major alien communication networks. Every message they send, every tactical briefing, every strategic decision, we're intercepting it all. They're fighting blind while we can see every move they make. Morrison allowed himself a moment of pride. The stealth technology that made Operation Shadowfall possible had been developed in complete secrecy over 5 decades. While aliens dismissed human innovation as reverse engineering, Earth scientists had been pushing the boundaries of physics in ways that would have shocked their galactic neighbors. Quantum phase shifting, temporal displacement fields, neural, network AI that could predict enemy movements with 97% accuracy. Humanity had been holding back its true capabilities for generations. What about the Centauri? Morrison asked. High Chancellor Morgath has called another emergency session, Dr. Wu replied, consulting his intelligence reports. Apparently, Senator Vextor's personal fleet was hit yesterday. 3 battleships, including his flagship, taken out within minutes. The good senator is, shall we say, significantly less arrogant than he was 6 months ago. The holographic display shifted to show intercepted Draconian communications. Vex Torquani's once proud voice was now strained with barely controlled panic as he addressed his military commanders. These attackers know our patrol schedules, our supply routes, our defensive capabilities better than we do ourselves. How is this possible? What species possesses such advanced stealth technology? Morrison exchanged glances with his senior staff. The irony was delicious. Aliens who had spent decades dismissing human intelligence capabilities were now being systematically outmaneuvered by the very species they considered primitive. Phase 3 is ready for implementation, Colonel Martinez reported. All stealth fleets are in position around major alien homeworlds. We can demonstrate the full extent of Earth's capabilities whenever you give the order, Admiral. Morrison checked the chronometer. In exactly 3 hours, the Galactic Senate would convene another emergency session to address the mounting crisis. Ambassador Vale had received an official summons, not as a petitioner this time, but as a potential suspect. The aliens were finally beginning to wonder if the humans they had so casually dismissed might be more dangerous than they appeared. "Send the signal," Morrison commanded. "All units, initiate Phase 3. It's time to decloak." Across the galaxy, the impossible began to happen simultaneously. Around Draconia Prime, Senator Vextor's homeworld, 17 massive human warships suddenly materialized from empty space. Not the crude utilitarian vessels the aliens expected from human shipyards, but sleek predators that seemed to bend light around their hulls. The ship's design incorporated technologies that Federation scientists had declared theoretically impossible: weapons that could destabilize planetary shields, engines that folded spacetime itself. At Hegemony Central, the insectoid leaders who had mocked human individualism watched in horror as their entire defensive fleet was disabled within minutes. The attackers didn't destroy the ships, they simply shut them down with electronic warfare capabilities that turned the aliens' own technology against them. On Morpheus, the shape-shifting beings who had questioned human psychological stability found their perfect telepathic harmony shattered by targeted psychic interference. For the first time in their species' history, they experienced true fear, a human emotion they had always considered primitive. But nowhere was the shock greater than at Centauri Prime itself. High Chancellor Morgath was addressing the emergency Senate session when the chamber's lights suddenly dimmed. Through the crystalline dome, shadows began moving across the surface, shadows that resolved into the silhouettes of a massive human fleet. "Impossible," whispered the ancient chancellor. "Our orbital defenses would have detected any approaching vessels light years away." That was when Ambassador Marcus Vale stood up from the observers section where humans had been relegated 6 months earlier. This time, however, he wasn't alone. Dr. Nina Petrova was beside him, but now she wore the uniform of Earth's Strategic Intelligence Division rather than civilian clothes. Captain Zara Okafor had shed her diplomatic security role to reveal the insignia of the Solar Defense Force Special Operations Command. "Honored delegates," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber. "I believe you wanted to discuss the recent disturbances in galactic shipping." Senator Vextor Caney rose from his delegation platform, his scales shifting through colors that indicated extreme agitation. You dare bring warships into Federation space? This is an act of war." Marcus smiled, not the diplomatic smile he had worn 6 months ago, but something altogether more predatory. "Senator, I'm afraid you misunderstand the situation. Those aren't warships approaching your homeworld. Those are the ships that have already been attacking your convoys for the past 6 months. We're simply allowing you to see them now." The revelation hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. The unknown forces that had been systematically dismantling their military and economic infrastructure weren't mysterious alien invaders. They were humans. The same humans these delegates had dismissed as primitive and evolutionarily stunted. Dr. Petrova activated a holographic display that showed detailed schematics of alien military installations, communication networks, and strategic resources. "While your species were congratulating yourselves on your superiority," she said calmly, "we were mapping every weakness in your defenses, every backdoor in your computer systems, every predictable pattern in your military doctrine." "For 75 years," Marcus continued, "humanity has been the model Federation observer. We've shared our technology, provided humanitarian aid, served as neutral mediators in your conflicts. And all the while, you've assumed we were too primitive to pose any real threat." High Chancellor Morgath's ancient voice quavered with something approaching terror. What do you want?" Marcus looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives, beings who had voted overwhelmingly to quarantine humanity just 6 months earlier. Most couldn't meet his gaze. "We want what we've always wanted," Marcus replied. "Respect, recognition as equals, and an end to the systematic discrimination that your Federation has practiced against my species. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates shouted questions, demands, and threats. But their voices were drowned out by a new sound, the deep, resonant hum of human ships powering up their weapon systems. "You have a choice," Marcus said, his voice cutting through the pandemonium. "You can continue to treat humanity as a lesser species, in which case you'll discover just how thoroughly we've infiltrated your governments, your militaries, and your economies over the past 7 decades. Or you can accept us as equals and learn to coexist with a species that you've gravely underestimated." Senator Vextor's proud demeanor had completely crumbled. The being who had dismissed humans as evolutionarily stunted was now trembling, as he realized that human agents had been operating within draconian space for decades, learning their weaknesses, mapping their defenses, preparing for this exact moment. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible? Your technology was primitive. Your ships were crude. Your tactics were simple." Dr. Petrova's smile was cold as winter on Pluto. "Senator, everything you thought you knew about human capabilities was carefully crafted theater. While you were watching our public colonies and laughing at our primitive settlements, we were building quantum laboratories in pocket dimensions, developing AI systems that could predict your strategic decisions months in advance, and perfecting stealth technology that makes our ships invisible to sensors that your species considers state-of-the-art." Captain Okafor stepped forward, her hand resting casually on a weapon that looked nothing like the crude human sidearms the aliens had seen before. Every diplomatic mission to alien worlds included intelligence operatives. Every trade negotiation mapped your economic vulnerabilities. Every cultural exchange identified key individuals who could be turned to our cause. You were so convinced of your superiority that you never bothered to look for threats from the primitive humans. The implications were staggering. If humans had been conducting covert operations for 75 years, then there was no telling how deeply they had penetrated galactic civilization. Government officials, military commanders, corporate leaders, any of them could be human agents or alien collaborators. High Chancellor Morgath, whose species had ruled the galactic core for millennia, suddenly looked every one of his 3,000 years. "What assurance do we have that you won't use these capabilities to conquer rather than coexist?" Marcus considered the question carefully. "Chancellor, for the past 6 months, we've demonstrated that we could cripple any species in this chamber whenever we chose. We could have destroyed your fleets entirely rather than simply disabling them. We could have targeted civilian populations rather than limiting ourselves to military and economic infrastructure. The fact that you're all still alive to have this conversation should tell you something about human intentions." Admiral Morrison's voice suddenly filled the chamber, transmitted from Luna Base with crystal clarity. "Esteemed delegates, I am Admiral Thane Morrison, Commander of Earth's Solar Defense Force. I want to make humanity's position absolutely clear. We do not seek conquest or domination. We seek recognition and respect. The choice is yours. Accept humanity as a full and equal member of the galactic community, or continue to face the consequences of treating us as inferiors." The Senate chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of the human fleet, maintaining position overhead. Through the crystalline dome, the delegates could see the sleek, predatory forms of ships that had been moving through their space undetected. For months, striking at will, vanishing without a trace. After what felt like an eternity, High Chancellor Morgath slowly rose from his ancient seat. "Ambassador Vale," he said, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. "The Galactic Federation would be honored to welcome humanity as a full member species, with all the rights, privileges, and responsibilities that such membership entails." The vote, when it came, was unanimous. As the human delegation prepared to leave Centauri Prime, now as representatives of the Federation's newest full member species, Marcus Vale allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The path to this victory had been longer and more complex than anyone could have imagined, requiring decades of careful planning, technological development, and covert operations. But perhaps most importantly, It had required humanity to stop, apologizing for what they were and start demonstrating what they could become. Senator Vextor approached Marcus as the session concluded, his once proud bearing now subdued with newfound respect and perhaps a touch of fear. "Ambassador," the Draconian said quietly, I may have underestimated your species." Marcus turned to face the being who had humiliated humanity just 6 months earlier. "Senator, you didn't underestimate us. You saw exactly what we wanted you to see. The difference is that we've always known what we were capable of. It just took the rest of the galaxy a while to catch up." As the human delegation departed Zentari Prime aboard a ship that was simultaneously more advanced and more beautiful than anything the aliens had thought possible, Marcus looked out at the stars and smiled. The real work was just beginning, building a truly equal partnership between humanity and the galactic community. But the foundation had been laid, not through humble supplication or diplomatic platitudes, but through the oldest and most effective form of communication in the universe: strength. The galaxy had finally learned to listen when humanity spoke, and humanity had made it clear that they would never be underestimated again.